Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. We are back with our weekly crypto news with Michael, who's head of all our written research over on the platform, pumping out all that alpha daily. And another interesting week, Michael, in crypto news and world news as the world keeps getting crazier.
Yeah, we're talking in the pre-show that it seems like Hollywood's been usurped by mainstream media now. Just some of the stories we've got coming out are just like things that you'd never think you would hear in our lifetime.
And I guess that's why we do what we do, because these decentralized systems are a way to break those shackles and give power and truth and transparency and all that stuff back to the humanity and a way out of the clutches of these powerful small group of people, whatever. But yeah, let's get into all this crypto news that's been coming out the past week.
All right. Well, we've had a little bit of a pullback, so which is healthy. I think that we were all semi-expecting that we would not just go straight line up. I think Ethereum has had that sort of opportunity now to sort of touch 4K several times, and Bitcoin has kind of been creeping past its all-time highs, like sort of floating around at 118, 119, 120. And so I think that this is good if we're wanting a bit more of a prolonged cycle. I think if we're just gone ripped 1 to 150 Bitcoin, it's probably almost all she wrote for a while. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
guess one of the things I spoke about was that once these markets have matured and we've got these big ETFs, we did see some reasonably big size sales, and but that's kind of this healthy turnover of rebalancing that the mature investors do. So they're not dumping all their Bitcoin or anything; they're just kind of rebalancing a little bit, and this is going to
Mm.
smooth out that curve and that growth, which is actually a good thing longer term, rather than having these big blow off tops and then these big crashes.
Well, there was the rumor going around on X that I think people were speculating that it was Roger Ver offloaded 80,000 Bitcoin for a couple of billion or something like that, and the price didn't even blip. So that's pretty unreal. There was a seller for a lot of Bitcoin. We don't know who it was, but and yeah, the price just took it in its stride. So pretty liquid market these days. Um, but man, we had some news this week that would have sent our markets to the absolute orbit in previous years. So we had Paul Atkins, who's the new Gary Gensler, and he couldn't be more different from Gary in any way. So he just effectively came out and said that pretty much all crypto tokens, with maybe a few exceptions, are not securities, which is very different from what was happening before, where we wouldn't tell you if you're a security and you wouldn't know if you're in violation until we sue you. So yeah, everyone's just gotten this big sort of green light. He's saying that they don't want people to be going offshore to go make these foundations to issue tokens while they've got their tech company based in the US. They said that they're going to give people a wiggle room period where it might be that you're semi-centralized to start with, but you get a wiggle room to be able to decentralize. And if you can't get it done in a certain period of time, then you'd have to get some sort of licensing.
Yeah,
Very, very like workable, like very workable.
and just to be realistic, this is a green stamp for altcoins, but that doesn't mean it's a green stamp for alt season. And we
No.
touched on this in our high net worth call last night. It still just means that capital is going to probably pour into the larger cap tokens and the next ones that get the ETFs and that sort of thing. It doesn't mean that these hundreds of thousands of tokens that are launching every day on Solana and Base and all that, it's just so saturated that the small altcoins aren't going to have that alt season.
It's too easy to launch a coin now. And so there's just so much new coins and so many unlocks. Like I don't think that, and you've mentioned it probably in three different videos over the last fortnight on the channel, that I think the idea that you can just throw a dart at a dartboard and get a 10x, those days are probably gone. But we can recalibrate our ideas that, 30 to 40% gains are like still pretty outrageous. That doesn't happen in the stock market.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they also have talked about that the ETFs are now going to be allowed staking. Well, that's coming. That's the next sort of thing, which is going to be very interesting as well now for things like Ethereum and some of the other ETFs, which are suspected to get approved this year. So it's almost the Dino coins. It's like Litecoin, Tron, ADA, and DOT are the ones, and Solana are the ones who are all tipped to get ETFs before the end of the year. And I guess that's just runs on the board. They've been around for a while, but you can see what might happen with inflows if people can get yield inside these ETFs. Even though we have seen in the last week sort of the inflows have slowed down a little bit, but I could see that this could be a big catalyst.
Yeah, that's what people have been wanting, to be able to stake and get those staking returns for their ETH and their Sol, Sui, whatever the next ETFs are, for sure.
So one that's probably close to my heart, being spending a lot of my time in Indonesia, is that Indonesia is considering adopting Bitcoin as a national reserve asset. This is very interesting. Anyone who's been to this part of the world before knows that the currency is denominated in the millions and the billions. So you go and buy a house for certain billions of rupiah, like it's a very like inflated number base, and that's just because they've had crazy amounts of inflation over the years. I think one Aussie dollar hovers around 10,000 Indonesian rupiah. But I mean, Indonesia is tipped to be the fourth biggest economy in the world by 2040, and they're already the fourth biggest population in the world. You know, India, China, US, Indonesia, and so they're young, they're tech savvy, they're highly mobile, very much a growing economy, and so cool that cool that they're looking at stuff like this. I know the vice president, he's a young guy, he's in his 30s still, and he's very crypto savvy. So
And yeah, this is kind of what we need. So this is almost like this is a country that isn't dominated by Hollywood, Western media, Western banking system, all this type of thing yet. So this is where the big opportunities lie for someone like Indonesia, who you say isn't a small player at all. And then that maybe paves the way for, say, the BRICS or whatever, because we're probably not going to see, America or Australia go all in illegal tenders and these sort of things first. It's got to come from these other countries, as we've seen with El Salvador and now hopefully Indonesia.
yeah, I could probably save it for a conversation for another day, but I've actually been consulting with the government here on their use of blockchain. I do have a little side project, which I'll talk about at another time when it's a bit more fleshed out. But yeah, the government here is actually actively using um, public ledgers to start rolling out public services on, which I've been lucky enough to be involved with over here. So we'll save that for another day, but there's a bit of a teaser. But yeah, it's all happening in Indonesia, that's for sure.
Awesome.
This is one which we've been talking about quite actively as sort of the Bitcoin L2 scene. And this is another one that came across our desk this week is that Alpen Labs launching their mainnet. Sorry, their testnet is now live. And they're now claiming that they're the first roll up that can actually use native Bitcoin as their asset, the main asset. And one thing that we thought was also quite interesting is that they have a Bitcoin backed dollar, BTD, which they're trying to roll out, which is also quite interesting. So we're going to pay some pretty close attention to here, like we are with Botanix and with Build on Bitcoin and with BitLayer and Stats, obviously being the OG in the space. You and I have both been quite bullish on this scene long term. So another very interesting player coming into the scene. You can see some of the like marketing material they've got. They're obviously well capitalized using a bit of AI here as well.
Yeah.
But
And I saw that they've had in conjunction with Liquidity there, which is one of the smaller actually few projects that has a decentralized stablecoin left on Ethereum. So as we spoke about in the pre-interview, EVM compatible, which is always good, but using zero knowledge tech, so it's actually real Bitcoin that they're going to be locking in contracts to mint and do this DeFi. So this is definitely another one to watch. And the testnet's live. Go play around, guys. There's been plenty of airdrops and all that sort of stuff,
yep,
just like we covered with Botanix and that recently. This has been a big focus of our research, is all the Bitcoin DeFi stuff.
yep, big time. So moving on as my computer just tries to load again. So again, another one here. So this time Bitfinex is talking about how they've now raised $28 million to launch a stablecoin layer one. So again, everyone knows where the cookie's crumbling. Like everyone's trying to get in. You look at some of these names here, like as far as investors go, but just really like the stablecoin play, everyone's kind of squabbling over it now to be the next, infrastructure as Donald Trump rolls out the new payment rails of everything. But we've also seen just Hong Kong this week just passed regulation saying that the Hong Kong dollar backed stablecoin is now going to be legal, and they're trying to get it through their hat in the ring. And we know that Hong Kong is like the test bed for China. So we'll see what happens there as well. But this is coming. Like, yeah, this is coming.
The stablecoin versus CBD.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the big battle for 2026.
Well, it's pick your poison. Would you rather a stablecoin controlled by a corporate, like sort of technocracy, or a government CBDC? Like,
Are they
neither of.
ultimately one and the same? Yeah.
Yeah. So just as I guess, a sign that DeFi summer is picking up again. So Alchemix is one of these OG projects, and they've now opened up with a whole bunch of liquidity mining opportunities as well, like 90% loan to value ratio, which is quite high, taking loans against your collateral. Good to see that these projects are still alive and kicking, and that people haven't sort of completely deserted them. But this got smashed. It's an old gem. And they're looking at a whole bunch of new incentives. And I think this is just kind of a trend now that a lot of the DeFi projects are live and kicking. And we've talked about how there's huge opportunity with very minimal risk, like not having to be in fluctuating assets, but being able to make quite good yield in some of these DeFi protocols. So another
Yeah.
one to watch. So another, I guess, interesting one from this week that we sort of like we're playing around with is that there's a huge amount of activity that have been happening, and a lot of on-chain sleuths are starting to talk about how you can create yield. And so this was like a little bit of a drama that happened throughout the week that people are trying to look at how they can best optimize their wallets and their yield. This is an interesting thread. We probably won't go through it today, but I just think to show that there's huge amounts of opportunity happening at the moment where people are now getting like drained or hacked. But this particular example was talking about how Hyperliquid had an issue, and we know that Hyperliquid has been super bullish. But Hyperliquid has gone back and has refunded people here. So not exactly something you'd see from a decentralized network quite often, but yeah, the Hyperliquid had some sort of issue here, and they've actually refunded people.
Nice. It's always good to say.
Um, So an obscure chain, which probably doesn't have a lot of market share at the moment, is ICP. I get a lot of ICP news because they bazooka cannon money around Southeast Asia. They've got a very strong Southeast Asia sort of recruitment and marketing plan. And so I know the guy who runs this project for the ICP protocol. And this is something that he's been banging on about for a year. And he sent me an early access code for it the other day. And I spent an hour playing around with it. And effectively, it's ChatGPT, but it writes its own code for dApps. And so I played around with it for an hour, and I built a DEX on ICP, and you can just click deploy, and it deploys it. Um, this is pretty freaky. I mean, I don't know how well that was going to work, but in theory, I had fun, and I was like, my jaw hit the floor when I saw this working. So that's the
Yeah,
new angle for ICP. They're
yeah.
trying
You
to
were
be the
saying
self-writing internet.
it wasn't just the Dex backend. You were able to just say, this is where I want my boxes on the front end and change the
Yep.
color. And I mean,
Yep.
I'm not sure if we've got something that's this far yet on, say, Ethereum, or as this comes to other layer twos and stuff, when anyone. And this is, kind of the positive thing about AI, that anyone can now use their creativity that can't code to build these websites and great projects. So I think this is a good thing for innovation compared to some of the sinister uses of AI, like surveillance, that's coming out.
Yeah. So one of the knocks on ICP was, are they actually a decentralized network? Because they're pretty much run by data centers, and so they're pretty decentralized as far as data centers go, but it's some pretty high threshold for the tech. And they're very unique. Like you need very unique wallets. They've got their own sort of login type sort of platform. But I don't know. I'm watching the space. They've got some very interesting tech, and this worked. Like yeah, like you're saying, I named it. I changed the colors. I moved boxes around. I told them what liquidity pools I was interested in. Hit deploy, and it posted to their blockchain. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fully open access yet, but keep an eye out for it. Um, some big movers at the moment, just for some random projects to quickly run through. So FIFA Rivals is a game that's launched in the App Store, and not many people realize, I've spoken about this before, but this is all 100% on chain. They've had 1 million downloads of this game already now, and this is all NFT volume on the Mythos chain. And so I've talked about Mythos here before, but yeah, they've had 1 million users download this in the last like sort of couple of weeks. Um, and they've actually got more games coming. They now have an NFT game. They have the FIFA game, and now they've got the Pudgy Penguin game is coming to the Mythos chain as well.
And how does this translate to number go up for the Myth token? Is it like a percent of all the, revenue and
Yep.
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all rev sharing. It's all like, behind the scenes, they're buying Myth for transaction fees. So they're abstracting that away so the user doesn't actually have to pay for transactions. It's all caught up in the fee model. But they are in L1. They migrated to be their own L1 from ETH like a little while ago. They're substrate based, so they're part of the Polkadot ecosystem. But they're very interesting in that they keep getting these big names. But like you look at the market cap of them, and they're like 100 million. So like I don't own any of this, so it's not like this is a shill particularly. But I've been watching this chart, just wondering why it's not doing anything when you've got a FIFA game, an NFL game, and now Pudgy Penguins is launching their game there as well. So if there is a gaming cycle, I'm going to be watching this.
Can you zoom out a bit longer term on the max price chart there to give people a look? We can see
Pretty
where
ugly.
the sort of all time high was, nearly $2 there, and we're down to 11 cents. That's the type of stuff that we like, really, isn't it? A project just
Yeah.
getting 1 million downloads, getting some revenue, and if that model that you just shared leads to actual price action, that's certainly something that I think is interesting.
It's Ethereum, Solana, and Mythos are the three chains with the most highest NFT volume these days. And so that's pretty good company for a project that's only valued at 87 million circulating market cap. So I'm watching it. I don't have any yet, but I'm watching it.
Yeah.
The other big one from the week as well is that this was a bit of an influencer launch. So for those that know Elio Trades and Alex Becker, they launched this project and instantly became the biggest DEX on AVAX within inside a week. They have a very interesting token model. And so these guys obviously know the space quite well. Um, AVAX went up like something like 400% in volume with the launch of this. And what they've done is that they've made it so 100% of the tokens were airdropped, but that was 100% of the circulating tokens. It was actually only 20% of the total amount of tokens. The other 80% were instantly burned. And that gave the people that burnt them, being the creating team, a share of the revenues. So there still technically is 20% of the revenues that's being shared with all the remaining token holders, but they don't own any tokens. And so I thought it was a pretty cool model, to be honest, that they had like, what was it, 500 million tokens. They burnt 400 million of them, and that was their cut. They're getting a revenue share, and airdrop the remaining token supply. So there's nobody to dump. There's no VCs. So probably good for the token. But yeah, just these new interesting models about how to launch tokens. But this popped off on Avalanche. So they've got some pretty cool yields. You can go and have a play around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can fault that token model, can you? If it's successful and they get trading fees and revenue share, they're entitled to that as the creators, but they're not going to dump any actual tokens on you. Yeah.
Yeah. So a bit happening this week. I think that we've had, some very bullish catalysts. We're having a bit of a market cool down, so the market's just digesting things. But it's just very interesting now that we could have this max bullish USA adoption, stable coins in Hong Kong and Indonesia buying Bitcoin and all sorts of stuff. But now we're having a correction. So this just shows the maturity of the market, I think.
Yeah, and hopefully people that are up big, this is something we spoke about in that high net worth call. If you've been up big on alts and you've been following us through previous cycles and we nailed the bottom of this cycle, it is time to start taking some profits on some altcoins that have gone up 10, 15x for you. But just be sensible. But I think Bitcoin is still probably the one thing that you want to be accumulating more of and buying dips and long term for sure.
Yep, 100%.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. We will chat to you again next week. Cheers, guys.